Hello and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Coming up on our program, Silicon Valley's response to President Trump's executive order on immigration. And a report from the border from one of our reporters who has been in San Diego all week. Plus, legendary athletes discuss the role of politics in sports. But first, we sit down with Ro Khanna, who defeated fellow Democrat Mike Honda for a congressional seat last November. The freshman lawmaker represents California's 17th district, including Silicon Valley. The son of immigrants himself, Khanna spoke out against the executive order that not only temporarily bars visitors from 7 nations, but also blocks refugees from Syria indefinitely. KQED senior editor of California Politics and Government, Scott Shafer, has more.
Congressman Khanna, welcome.
Thank you for having me back on.
I want to ask you something that happened this week about Donald Trump, the president, of course, tweeting that perhaps UC Berkeley should lose its funding as a result of the protests there and the cancellation of a speaker, the right-wing speaker. And he's also been threatening funding for sanctuary cities like San Jose and San Francisco. And I'm wondering, as a member of the Budget Committee, is that just bluster to you, or how seriously do you take it?
Well, I certainly don't think my Republican colleagues would go along with that type of intimidation. There are many people who believe in the First Amendment. So I'm hopeful that on the Budget Committee, I will be able to convince both Republicans and Democrats not to do that. But of course, I disagree with any of the president's tactics in tweeting out those type of intimidation messages.
On the other hand, there's also a possible funding hit on Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. The Republicans have talked about repealing that. California gets about $15 billion a year just from health care for our expansion of health care here in California. What about that? How worried should California be?
We should be very worried. That is a real challenge, and there are a lot of people in the Republican Congress who do want to repeal that. And I have argued for a single-payer health care, but at the very least, we need to make the case that we can't repeal this without any plan for replacement. And I grilled one of the witnesses recently on the Budget Committee, and she admitted that she thought Trump's plan was inadequate as recently as April of last year. And so we just need to keep making the point that they have absolutely no replacement plan.
Is there a sense or a concern on your part that California, setting itself up as sort of the resistance movement with Jerry Brown and the new Attorney General, are you concerned that we could be putting ourselves a bit in the crosshairs?
I'm not. I think that California is doing something that is principled with our values. That said, I don't think that is a sufficient strategy. And my belief is we need to have an affirmative agenda, a positive vision, and understand that this election was not just about Donald Trump. This election was about a lot of people who felt not included in our economy. And I have argued that we need to be creating tech jobs, not just in my district, but across America. We need the Democratic Party to have a much more economically populist message. We need to get off of reliance on PAC money. So I hope we will view this election for some introspection and have a positive agenda to win people, and not just be only about resistance.
But there are many people who feel that the tech industry, which of course your district very much represents, is part of the problem in the sense that there is technology and automation and driverless cars, all this technology that is threatening the jobs of the very voters who were so turned off by Hillary Clinton, apparently, the voters in Michigan and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. What are your thoughts about that?
I think we have to talk very specifically. So I am visiting Appalachia in Kentucky, and there's a program there funded by the Appalachian Economic Regional Commission where they are educating and preparing coal miners' kids and others on iOS software for the iPhone, Android software for Google, where in 4 months people are getting jobs, 40, 50 jobs. Tech companies have to do a better job creating jobs in Ohio, in Michigan, and Wisconsin, and making the case that you shouldn't just fear technology, that technology also can create opportunity. But absolutely, it's a wake-up call for our district in Silicon Valley that we need to do a better job in creating these economic opportunities across the country and telling the story of how technology can help middle-class lives.
Congressman, we've seen a lot of protests across the country, here in California included, of course, over the executive orders regarding refugees and immigration in general. What are your thoughts about that as the son of immigrants? What concerns you the most about these policies?
Well, I'm concerned not as a son of immigrants. I'm concerned as a bicentennial baby in Philadelphia, born in Philadelphia, as someone who reveres our Constitution. And what makes America extraordinary is that we don't have an ethnic or religious test in how we judge people. And what concerns me about the orders is that that they impose those types of tests. We need to recognize that our comparative advantage in the world is that we have folks here, the best and brightest, regardless of their ethnicity or religion.
All right, freshman and rookie Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Scott, for having me back on.
Earlier this week, Google co-founder Sergey Brin spoke to employees as Silicon Valley reacted to President Trump's executive order on immigration. Google's reaction was just one of many responses from high-tech companies. Joining me now to discuss this are Kara Swisher, founder of the online tech journalism site Recode, and Queena Kim, senior editor of KQED Silicon Valley Desk. Welcome to you both. Kara, beginning with you. You broke this story this week. Several Silicon Valley companies now banding together to oppose President Trump's travel ban. Which companies are involved and what exactly are they doing?
Well, there's a lot of things going on. I think it started on Friday when the order came out, and I think they were caught unawares because these companies had gone to see Trump, all the heads of them, if you remember, a couple weeks ago, and were sort of acquiescent to him. They said nothing. They made no statements. These are people who don't make statements, and they didn't. They just sort of skulked in and out. And I think they were hoping that he wouldn't do stuff like this. And they discussed immigration in the meeting and talked about how important it was to Silicon Valley. And then he turned around and did exactly what he said he would do on the campaign trail, which was to create a ban.
But that shouldn't surprise them, though, right? I mean, what President Trump is doing now is very much in line with what he said he would do when he was campaigning.
Yes, that's what I pointed out in many articles. At the time, I wrote a really tough article calling them sheeple, because I felt like, aren't you listening to what he's saying? And, you know, I always go, there's a famous Maya Angelou quote that's like, when someone shows you who they are the first time, believe them. And he said it a lot, and they thought that he would not do quite the same thing, that it was all bluster. So they were surprised, and then they started to act on Friday after the immigration ban came out.
So what is at stake for them? Because the companies that are, the 7 nations that are named in this, including Iraq, Iran, Syria, Yemen, those aren't the countries where a huge portion of foreign workers come from.
They do. There's more than you think. There's more impacted.
But they come more from other countries. So what is at stake here beyond the 7 nations?
The larger principle of immigration is critical to innovation. Like, period. It's the core at the heart of this country, like how we grew as a country, and that immigrants are welcome. And I think in Silicon Valley, you look at Sergey, he's a refugee from Russia. All right, he's a refugee. He's not an immigrant, he's a refugee. You have Steve Jobs' father, Syrian immigrant. You have the CEO of Google, of the search part of the business, immigrant. Yeah. Head of Microsoft, immigrant. It goes on and on and on. And also all these, it's not just because they are, it's because everyone believes in the idea that, you know, immigration is a good thing for innovation, and it is.
And that kind of flows into the H-1B visa issue as well, because a lot of the workers come from other countries.
Right. And I think what's sort of interesting is, like, what was that thing that they said about Trump? His followers don't take him literally, they take him seriously.
That was Peter Thiel.
Yes. In terms of this ban, it's like, I was looking at these numbers that a professor from Howard crunched, and there are not that many people who are from these 7 countries that are, you know, I think Google's email had said there were something like 187 employees that were affected. But I think it's like, in terms of taking it seriously as anti-immigration stance, and where does this stop? And obviously the workforce in Silicon Valley is very immigrant-heavy, foreign workers, and I think it's just sort of spreading a general fear amongst some of those workers. I was at a mosque the other day in Santa Clara, a lot of tech workers there, and they're feeling like, for the first time, they're hearing from people abroad. You know, obviously Silicon Valley is still the capital of tech, but maybe we won't come this year. Maybe we'll wait a couple years. So it seemed important for these companies. They were very heartened that they came out strong, even though these people weren't from those countries. They were Muslim, and they feel under attack.
And so what's next? Because there are now reports of a draft order targeting H-1B visas. Sure. And so does that pose an even bigger threat to Silicon Valley's workforce?
All of it is. I mean, there's some things tech wants from Trump, less regulation. They want their money back, repatriated income that they have billions and trillions of dollars trapped abroad. They want lower taxes. Those are their business concerns. But there's other things that are going to be happening. One is HB1 visas. What are the rules going to be? Are they going to be good for Silicon Valley? Is it going to be good for immigration? Second one is things like gay rights. I know it sounds like sideways, but Silicon Valley has been very strong. You know, if you remember in Indiana and North Carolina, sure. Silicon Valley leaders were the first people to speak out on these ridiculous laws there. And so they're going to have clashes over and over and over again.
Student visas,
encryption, everything. It's just most of what Silicon Valley stands for, their core values of their companies beyond shareholder value is not what's happening in these executive orders.
And so we're starting to see, you know, some backlash, right? Because just yesterday, actually, Uber's CEO, Travis Kalanick, yes, and stepped down from the president's economic advisory board. Tesla's Elon Musk is still on it. Do you think that he will start feeling the pressure now to resign from that board?
You should see social media. I feel bad in a lot of ways for Elon, kind of the attacks.
Do you think he'll step down as a result?
I don't know. I think he had a different attitude. He was going to go and confront the president on these issues. And Travis is like, I'm not having one more picture with President Trump. You know, I mean, they delete Uber didn't help. I think his employees were horrified that he was on the council. And he just said, I'm not even going. And so Elon prefers to meet and see if he can change minds, and I think that just decides which one wants to do it.
And it's interesting. One of the producers here pointed out during the Obama administration, all these economic council meetings were in public records. So he was sort of, and I think it's sort of interesting. Like, would it be more powerful for someone like Elon Musk or Travis Kalanick to go into those meetings and publicly, on the record, you know, go confront the president about these sort of issues? So I don't know. I guess there's a little bit of a debate as to, is it better just to bow out or maybe make a little bit more of a public stand, you know, when you have an audience?
What are the risks to Silicon Valley to taking these types of public stands?
Retaliation. This is a president. It looks like he likes to. I mean, his Arnold Schwarzenegger war looks like it's in full battle. Like, it's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing. But he retaliates on Twitter and other places. They could do things. Elon's got a lot of space and car regulatory issues that are very important to his company, SpaceX. And so everybody, you know, Travis has got car regulatory things around self-driving cars. So does Google. There's all kinds of things. The question is this administration going to attack the one industry that is actually creating jobs and probably at the center of innovation? Is that really a policy that, you know, just for retaliation because they disagree?
Well, you know, polls show that nearly half of the country do support the immigration ban. Are there tech companies or prominent Silicon Valley figures who support the immigration ban?
No, not that I know of.
I think there are reasonable debates to be had about immigration policies on, like, you know, reasonable minds can disagree. But I think all the news information that's been coming out about this, there was Rudy Giuliani coming out saying that Trump had asked him to find a way to do the Muslim ban legally, and this was the consequence of it. So I think this doesn't really fall into the idea of, like, can we have immigration reform? Or there might be different sides to this. It sort of feels very much, at least from the worker standpoint, from the folks I'm speaking to, is that it's a very discriminatory, closed-minded
and employees. You have to
policy,
think of, Silicon Valley has to think of its employees.
Right.
This is the key to Silicon Valley is talent. And there are core values of a company. There's also talent values. There's also shareholder values. And you've got to sort of balance them out. And I think probably on a lot of these things, they've got to come down hard on open borders. They just have to.
And so do you think, though, that this will affect the talent who are willing to come to Silicon Valley? And are we going to lose them to places like Israel, Canada,
everywhere,
China?
Everywhere.
Well, I was just on the phone with this guy who's the co-founder of a company called True North. They're starting to set up subsidiaries for tech companies here in Silicon Valley and Canada who might have visa problems, might have H-1B problems. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty now. Even people, he was saying he's getting calls even from people who aren't from these 7 countries, right? There's just a lot of uncertainty about, do I want to come to the United States? Do I even want to deal with the hassle? You know, I might not be Muslim, of just like having to be, but I might look Muslim, having to be stuck in the airport for 3 or 4 hours every time I want to go back and forth because Homeland Security wants to check them out more. And so what was sort of interesting is that he was saying that it's a lot of startups that are starting to go and try to use his services there. And that makes me wonder what happens to the pipeline, because a lot of these startups get bought up by bigger companies and, you know, sort of help drive that innovation.
Core principles. core principles, and that's what you have to wonder is where you balance shareholder value with core principles, and that's going to be a clash.
We will have to leave it there. Kara Swisher and Queena Kim, thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last week, President Trump signed an executive order authorizing construction of a new wall along the U.S.-Mexico border and hiring up to 15,000 new Border Patrol and immigration officers. KQED reporter John Sepulvado is in San Diego to talk to residents about immigration and the proposed wall. John Sepulvado joins me now from our sister station, KPBS, in San Diego. Hi, John. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You've been talking to supporters of President Trump in San Diego. What are their thoughts on building a wall along the Mexican border?
Well, almost to a T, most people don't actually want the wall, and that's because they already have a fence. The fences started in 1994 in California, and they've seen that in large part it does not work. And so they understand that a wall where it would go is in these extremely rugged areas. They know that it would be extremely costly. And so they're really just kind of more focused on the other parts of the immigration policy, specifically what President Trump calls extreme vetting and making sure that people who are in the country and have committed crimes are deported. But almost to a T, with the exception of one person I spoke to, nobody really wants a wall.
How do they feel about the Muslim ban then, the one affecting 7 Muslim majority countries?
Well, again, almost to a T, they all support it. And I think that shows the real difference between how people look at folks who have come illegally from over the border. The general assumption is that most of those folks have come up here to work, while there is this belief, and I want to make it very clear, there are no facts to back up this belief. There has been no instances of someone from a refugee community or who came to the United States as a refugee carrying out these types of attacks. But there is a belief that people from those countries do those kinds of things, and so they think it's a matter of security and they support the ban.
So what do you think are some of the factors perhaps behind so the divergent views, if you will, on Mexican immigration versus Muslim immigration?
Well, I think it really depends on who you talk to at any given moment. So I'm just going to give my general opinion, and I want to make it clear it's my opinion based on the facts that I have seen. But based on those facts, I think that people are more comfortable down here with Latino and other immigrants because they work with them every day. They see them at the store, they're in their communities, and sometimes they're even in their churches. Their kids definitely go to school with other people's kids. So there's a bigger immersion on this area, whereas with Muslim, there's a large Muslim and refugee contingent here in San Diego County, for example. In the town that I grew up in, Lemon Grove, is one of the biggest refugee settlement areas in the nation, not just in the California. But those communities are much more insular. They do not share the same faith, and so there's a big disconnect between what people believe that they know about people and what they actually know about people. And I think that because those communities are insular and because they're not as well understood, there's a greater amount of fear. And I want to make it very clear that's my own opinion and analysis based on reporting on these things for the past 10 years.
Sure. Congress has had to confront this issue of a physical barrier before. Why do you think the outcry seems so much more harsh and vocal this time?
Well, I think it's because of how now President Trump, characterized Latinos, specifically Mexicans, during the campaign. I mean, I'm a quarter Mexican, and it's very difficult to sit and listen to someone say that people from my heritage are rapists and murderers. I mean, I just know that that's patently not true. And so I think that did not sit well with many people, both who are in the Latino community and not in the Latino community. What is different with President Trump is he went from talking about the policies of it. So think about Pete Wilson in 1994. He talked about overcrowding at schools. He talked about concern of crime committed by illegal immigrants, undocumented people. That is an actual absolute concern and worry with people who are in the country, that we know that undocumented people do commit crimes, some of them very heinously. 13% of the people in California state prisons are undocumented, we believe. But to go and then say all people are that, and to say all people who are coming from these regions are bad, it characterizes them as the other, and that is what has really caused this outcry.
John, what have you been hearing about how the travel ban is being enforced? There seems to be some confusion about that.
One of the things that I've heard that is most concerning to civil libertarians is that immigrants who have entered the country on green cards have been asked by Border Patrol, by Custom Enforcement, to essentially sign away their right to come to the United States. There are at least 2 cases that have happened in California that have been documented where this is alleged to have happened.
What do you mean by that? Are they being asked to sign away their permanent residency status, their green cards, and is it happening a lot?
Effectively their green card status, yeah. So what's happening is people are going in, they have a green card, the officers are saying, hey, would you mind, and they push this form in front of them and they said, would you mind signing this? The immigrants don't know what the form is. This is the allegation. I want to make it clear it's an allegation at this point, but that the immigrants don't know what the form is and that they're signing it away. We have gotten a number from the government in court on Friday. The government said that 100,000 people have had their immigration status revoked in some way, and many of those instances are believed to have happened through this process, which I just told you about.
All right. John Sepulvado, thank you so much for talking to us from San Diego. This Sunday, more than 100 million people are expected to watch the 51st Super Bowl. Mixed in with the punts and the field goals will be the Super Bowl commercials. This year's offerings include a pro-immigration ad from an iconic American beer maker. As Monica Lamb reports, the politically charged ad is just the latest installment in a long and storied history mixing politics and sports.
Welcome to America. Go back home.
The makers of Budweiser beer plan to air a pro-immigration television ad during this Sunday's Super Bowl, jumping into the political fray alongside athletes and coaches. This week, Golden State Warriors coach Steve Kerr criticized President Donald Trump's executive order to restrict immigration from 7 predominantly Muslim countries.
It's a horrible idea.
Kerr knows the pain of terrorism. His father was assassinated in Beirut when Kerr was only 18. He now worries the executive order could exacerbate security problems.
It's the wrong way to go about it. If anything, we could be breeding anger and terror.
Critics of Kerr fired back immediately, tweeting that Kerr should stay in his lane and stick to sports. I sat down with 3 people who say sports and politics are inseparable. Olympic gold medalist Tommie Smith, Olympic silver medalist Danielle Slaton, and longtime activist San Jose State professor Harry Edwards.
And what most of the people who say, well, politics really you shouldn't bring that, what they really saying is sit down and shut up. I don't want to hear that. I want to watch my basketball, and I don't care what LeBron James thinks about killings by police officers in the African-American community.
We all feel helpless and frustrated by the violence. It's time to look in the mirror and ask ourselves, what are we doing to create change?
WNBA players donned T-shirts honoring Black Lives Matter and slain police officers. 49er Colin Kaepernick took a knee during the national anthem. All are following in a long tradition of political activism, captured powerfully by 2 medalists at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics.
I made a military turn to the right, facing the flag, and the music started. It sent a chill through my body. Then the next move changed my life.
Smith and teammate John Carlos raised their fists to show solidarity with all African Americans.
Do you remember when you walked out off of the podium? Was it quiet?
That's when the stand went wild and calling us names. And as I looked up into the stand, I saw just nothing but madness, animal. And I gave a fist for one last time, raised the fist one last time.
It's my job to pick up the torch that these gentlemen started and that the women before me and the men before me started.
Slaton played with the silver medal winning women's Olympic soccer team in 2000. She and other female athletes are still fighting to close the massive pay gap between professional men's and women's teams.
But I think it takes the voice of women continuing to ask, demand for rights, but it also takes the support of men around to be able to lend a voice as well. Because no right that was given to a woman was decided by a woman, it was decided by a man.
Former NBA All-Star Chris Webber acknowledged that male athletes should do more to support women's athletics.
Always marginalized. We have to admit that as men, as a society, that really do we care about women's issues as much as we care about our own, even though they're in the same exact, genres with sport.
Webber made his remarks at the launch of the Institute for the Study of Sports, Society, and Social Change at San Jose State University. Other speakers included longtime activist and NBA Hall of Famer Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
A lot of young people really admire athletes, and just by being curious about what the athletes that they admire are doing, a lot of young people find their way into social activism.
Former San Francisco 49er Anquan Bolden said athletes understand hardship.
A lot of us, our backgrounds are similar, where we didn't have a lot growing up. So we understand what it's like to go without. There's a lot of guys that are in the locker room that are willing to help, but they don't understand how powerful their voice is.
It's clear their voices are powerful. When quarterback Colin Kaepernick refused to stand for the national anthem, high school football teams quickly followed suit.
This is what I think of you.
The repercussions were swift as well. Angry fans burned Kaepernick's jersey, calling him unpatriotic. And longtime activist and NFL Hall of Famer Jim Brown faced backlash from the political left when he agreed to meet with President Donald Trump.
I voted for Hillary, and everybody knew that, and she lost. We didn't bring out the vote for her to become victorious. Donald Trump became the president of the United States. That seat is very powerful. I am a person that will reach out to the President of the United States, whoever it is, and try to get them to understand what I believe will make great changes in this country.
I said, so I'm glad you're going in. I said, the other thing is, I want you there when he has his Trayvon Martin moment. I want you there when he has his Mike Brown moment.
Edwards says the Institute is committed to fostering participation from all points on the political spectrum.
Even those who say, we don't need change, we need a reinstitution of tradition. My disposition would be, show it to me. Let's get that out, because that's one that I want to see debated.
Welcome to St. Louis, son.
For KQED Newsroom, I'm Monica Lamb.
And that does it for us. For more of our coverage online, go to kqed.org/newsroom. I'm Thuy Vu. Thanks for watching.